This is Amud Yomi Gemara Berachos Daf Tesvav Amid Beis, and we're holding in the bottom of Tesvav Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom, Tanan Hasam. We're in the middle of a lengthy discussion trying to figure out what is the status of reading Shema in a scenario that you cannot hear it, and other similar halachis that a cherish, but particularly a cherish that talks and cannot hear, at what status could he yes or not do mitzvahs, etc. In the Mishnah, we have the Shita of the Tanakama, who we now know is Rav Yehuda, who says that if you don't hear that which you say, you are still Yaitse, and Rav Yaisi says you're not Yaitse. We had a lengthy Amud Aleph discussing whether this was a din lechatzchila or not, and we concluded Ha Rameir Ha Rav Yehuda. So Tanan Hasam continues the Gemara and asks, we quote a Mishnah. Hakol ksherim likris as a Megillah. With regard to kriyas a Megillah, it says everyone can read the Megillah chutz mecher shot v'kat. Rav Yehuda machshir v'kat. Says the Gemara, man tana cherish diavad namiloi. Who is the Tanakam? Who's the Tanakam that says a cherish shot v'kat cannot read Shema? They cannot read Megillah. Excuse me. Rav Nasna, seemingly, this is Rav Yaisi, like in our Mishnah, Yatsa, so to over here. Rav Yaisi did Tanakam, Kerish Rav Lishmi Lazna Yatsa, did Rav Yaisi Yatsa. Asks the Gemara, and then we're going to have a lot of repetition, as you'll see in Amud Beis, similar to the discussion we just had in Amud Aleph. How do you know this sheet is Rav Yaisi? And when Rav Yaisi in our Mishnah said, Lo Yatsa, that meant even B'diavad. Dilma, as we turn over to Tesvav Amud Beis, perhaps Rav Yehudi. Maybe this Mishnah about Mikra Megillah that says a Chershat V'Katan cannot read it is Rav Yehuda. And when in our Mishnah Rav Yehuda said your Yatsa, Ulechatchila Hu Delahi. And when Rav Yehuda said, and when Rav Yehuda, the Mishnah Megillah says you're not Yoitze, that's only lechatchila. Hadiyavet shaper tami, like he said in our Mishnah, you be Yoitze v'diyavet. Says the Gemara, of course not. Lo sagadayich. Why not? First of all, the Ketani Cherish Dumi Deshet V'Katan. It said the whole list Cherish Shot V'Katan, which teaches us Mashet V'Katan Devin Amiloi, Cherish Devin Amiloi. So first of all, the problem is the fact that it said them all together shows that the cherish that we're talking about is the same status as the shayta v'katan, and just like the shayta v'katan is not just a din lechatzchila, it's even a din b'diavad. So too by the cherish. V'dilma, says the Gemara, how do you know? Ha kedisa v'ha maybe not. Even though it's a whole list of cherish shayta v'katan, maybe each one is a different din. Meaning, maybe by the cherish it's only lechatzchila. But b'diavad, it would work. Like, really, she does Rav Yehuda of our Mishnah. It said, Chershat v'katan? No. Only Shet v'katan is also diavad namiloi. Says the Gemara, now here's really the bomb question, as everyone was anticipating. We must just look like Rav Yehuda. Can you really say that Mishnah, Mikra Megillah, is Rav Yehuda? V'hamidikdani seifa, the end of that Mishnah said, Rav Yehuda machshir v'katan. Rav Yehuda says it's kosher. B'chal d'reisha lav Rav Yehuda, he says the Gemara, from the fact that the seifa is Rav Yehuda, clearly the reisha is not. So in classical Gemara sense, the Gemara says, how do you know? V'dilma, really, I'll tell you, kula Rav Yehudi. Maybe really that whole Mishnah Megillah is all Rav Yehuda. Utrei gavni katan machzir mechsav hachikitani. Just have to add in some words into the Mishnah in Megillah, and let's say as follows: Hakol kshem like says Megillah chutz chershat v'kat. Now here's what we added. Bamed dvarim amun. What is it referring to? V'katan shleigiyah lechinuch. Only a child that has not reached the age of chinuch. That's when he is not able to read the Megillah. Aval katan shegiya lechinuch on the last line. I feel lechatchila kosher tivi Rav Yehuda. Then maybe Rav Yehuda says such a katan is kosher even lechatchila. She Rav Yehuda machshir b'katan. As Rav Yehuda is machshir by a katan, and then it will fit with our din in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, b'mayu kipta ki Rav Yehuda u'david in lechatchila lai. You're telling me that it's Rav Yehuda and it's only a din b'diavad. A lot of the time you have Yehuda, Bredi, Rav Shimon, and Pazi. This is now starting really the recap from yesterday. Now we're going to quote all the cases that we spoke about yesterday, trying to prove whether this din of Rav Yehuda is din l'chatchila or not. A lot of the time you have Bredi, Rav Shimon, and Pazi. That Mishnah says that even l'chatchila, one who cannot hear is allowed to take off Truma. Mani, who is that? Loi Rav Yehuda, Loi Rav Yaisi. Why? Rav Yehuda. We learned Rav Yehuda just now is a diavad in lechatchila loi. That when Rav Yehuda in our Mishnah says yatz, it's only b'diavad and not lechatchila. Rav Yaisi, diavad nami loi doesn't even work b'diavad. Elamai, so what are you going to answer me? Rav Yehuda, v'afilu lechatchila nami. Maybe you'll tell me it really is Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda's din is even lechatchila. Then we have a different price. That's a problem. Allah, the tiny that we should learn to the price. Money, who's that price? Allah, Rav Yehuda, Rav Yosi, Rav Yehuda, Amar afilu lechatchila nami, Rav Yosi, Amar afilu devanami loi. Says the Gemara, let me know what I'll tell you. Rav Yehudi, v'afilu lechatchila nami. So what are you going to do with this last price of greeting Shema? Hadidei Adi Rabbi, the Tanya Omer of Yudim Mishav Laz ben Azariah, Hakari Shabbat Zach Shemi Laz No Yishlem Mashra Yisrael, Omer Lei Rameir Ayu Omer Shanachim Zav Chayim Alavecha, Achivad Asalev in Devar. Says the Gemara, the same exact where we ended off yesterday's Amid. Now that you're coming out to such an opinion, now that you're saying Rav Yehuda could hold like his Rebbe one place and like himself another place, and when we do that parenthetically, we're quoting Shitas Rameir. Feel to Rav Yehuda Rabbi Sirle. We don't have to make a machlekes between Rav Yehuda and his Rabbi. Rav Yehuda could agree to his Rabbi Lokacha Rameir or Rav Yehuda. Rabbi Meir. And that's how we'll dot all our I's and cross all our T's, answering up all the braces. And finally, we conclude, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Shila, halacha. What is the halacha? Ki Rav Yehuda. Which Rav Yehuda? Shamim Shav Laz ben Azariah. Ve halacha ki Rav Yehuda. So the cryptic statement that the halacha is both like Rav Yehuda and like Rav Yehuda that he's saying in the name of Laz ben Azariah. And explains the Gemara. Sricha. He had to say both statements, that it's halacha like Rav Yehuda and halacha like Rav Yehuda. The name of Rav Yehuda is halacha Rav Yehuda, just like that. I would have thought if you lechatchila, it's even in lechatchila. K'mash lan halacha Rav Yehuda, shem shem Rav Yehuda, v'yish min halacha Rav Yehuda, shem shem Rav Yehuda. However, sarich. That's what you need to do. V'yin le'tekana. Kamash Malan, halacha like Rav Yehuda. And that concludes really yesterday's Amud in reality, as this was almost a repeat, figuring out the Shitas Rav Yehuda, figuring out Shitas Rabbi Yosi. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, on the same exact vein, Machlaikas. This Machlaikas is all B'Kriyas Shema. Aval B'Shar Mitzrayis, Divrei HaKol Lo Yatza. By other mitzvah, he says, Rav Yosef, you would not be Yotze if you don't hear Tersev. Why? Because by other mitzvahs it says Haskis U'Shema Yisrael. Make attentive and listen. Says therefore, seemingly other mitzvahs you actually hear. Meisvei asked the Gemara, says in the Brayso Yatzos. What do you mean? We have clearly a Brayso that's teaching me when it comes to Berachos Hamazayin that if you did it even though you didn't hear your Yotzei, so if you want to say what Rav Yosef is saying from the pasuk of Haskil Shema Yisrael, it means as follows: Amar Rav Yosef Machlekes b'Kriyishma Tersev Shema Yisrael. That's where we have a machlekes. We have to hear it. Aval b'shar mitzvahs divrei hakol hayatza. The exact opposite. Everyone knows here. Yes, yaitze. I v'haksiv, not v'ai. Excuse me. V'haksiv, and it's a raya haskil Shema Yisrael. Excuse me. Ask the Gemara. I v'haksiv haskil Shema Yisrael. But the pasuk seemingly says you have to hear it. Says the Gemara. Ha'u k'divrei Torah ksiv. That is referring particularly about divrei Torah, as Rashi says. Kitzla atzvachem al divrei Torah. And we continue quoting the din in the Mishnah, the second din in the Mishnah, which was what? Kara v'loy dikdik b'is Yisrael. You read without being medaktik in the words of Kriya Shema. Amar Rav Tevi, Amar Rav Yishai, lacha k'divrei shteim lahakel. We're making in both ways. What does that mean? Rashi points out directly across. Halach Rav Yehuda lo b'yishmi. You don't have to hear it. Halach Rav Yosef lo b'yidiktuk. You don't have to read the words precisely. We continue. Says the Gemara, Rav Tevi, Rav Yishai. My dear Sib, what is the meaning of the pasuk? Shalashena loitis ba'ano. These three are never satisfied. Shala shaol va'itzer rechem. The grave and the narrow part of the womb. What does that mean? What sheiches between the shal and the itzer rechem and the narrow part of the woman's body of the womb? Just like the rechem is the machlis takes in the zera of the husband that is moitzi the vlad. Av shaul, just like the grave, machlis umaitzi. The cover as well does the same. When it comes to the rechem, it takes in quietly at the time of a leda. It's a noisy procedure. Rashi says it's a lot of crying, a lot of difficulty. Shaul, the grave, then when you bury someone, there's lots of kailais. Actually, that's what Rashi was talking about, excuse me, I think. Ein Aydin, well, it's the same thing. Ein Aydin should be seen in man Mikali Kalis. Mikan Shuva Laimer Tchias Mesim in Atayra. This is a Raya, says the Gemara. Those who say there's no Tchias Mesim in the Torah. We have Rav Tavi named Rav Yishaya, which seemingly we're quoting just because he said it did in the previous Gemara. That of course is a Raya to Tchias Mesim in the pasuk of Shal Shin Lo Tispana Shalva Tzerechem. The equation of the Shalom Tzerechem teaches us that there is Kriyas Min Atayra. Tani Rav Yishia, Kamei de Rav, continues Rav Yishia, Ochsafta, Makol B'chsaf, says you should write that you have to all be written down. Afilu tzavos, even the psukim just telling you what to do, as Rashi says, tzavos or barsh going to chart b'chsaf the sarch lichtov tefillin and mezuzos. These parshiyos have to be tefillin and mezuzos. Amar leit Amar Chamani, who says it's Rav Yudi the Amar kabei saita. He says by saita oilos kasov. Savais inay kaisif. Rav Yehuda says when it comes to Saita, you only have to write down the curses and not the instructions in the parsha how to do it. Over there, it's only because it says ha'ila, therefore you only write down the oilas. You have to even write down the tzavais, which are the commandments, the parts of the parsha which are telling you what to do. That's part of tefillin and mezuzos. Says the Gemara, time to Rabbi Yehuda mishad chsev chsav, mishad chsev chsav. Time to Rabbi Yehuda mishad chsev oilos. Oilos in tzavais loy. Says the Gemara, the reason for Rabbi Yehuda is because it says oilos, and that only there, but not anywhere else. So by us, we shouldn't need a pasuk because only over there by it says oilos elah. That's why you only have to write down the oilers, but anywhere else. Says the Gemara, we still need the pasuk. Maybe we can make zir shaveh from over there by Saitam. Asum oilers in tzavais loy, avachanami tzavais loy, because rachmanuch savtem afilu tzavais. So it says over here by us savtem, they have to write down even the instructional psukim. And we conclude today's Amid, 5 lines to the bottom of the two dots. Sani Rav Avadia kamei de Rav v'li madatem. What do we learn after there? She'ilim mudcha tam. Now, when you say Shema, it should be tam, it should be pure. What does that mean? You should put spaces between the words that could sound attached. Ani Rava Basrei, Rava responded and said, Kigoin, al levavecha, al levavchem, v'chol levavcha, v'chol levavchem, esev b'sazcha, v'avata, mehira, kanaf, psil, escha, me'eretz. Basically, any word that the last letter and the first letter are the same, you have to put an extra pause. We cool off Gehenim for him. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Befarish Shakai, when Hashem scatters the Malachim, the kings, but Tishlag b'tzalmoin. There's going to be shelling in the Salmon in the darkness. Al tikri b'farish scatters. Ela b'feirosh when it's clear. Al tikri b'tzalmoin in the darkness. Ela b'tzalmaves in Gehenim. So if you do things clearly, then the tzalmaves will be cooled off. The Gehenim will be cooled off if you say Shema. Clearly, we'll pick it up from Rav Chanina the next year. B'siyata d'shmaya.